Okay, so let's talk a bit about learning and teaching animation. What it takes to animate and how to even start if you want a career in animation. And let's get one thing out of the way first. Like, is learning animation hard?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's definitely no joke. And it's like any art form, you never just learn animation. You can learn fundamentals of animation, and even then you haven't learned them. You just know them. So you could have 15 years of experience, and you could still be practicing your fundamentals. Like you're stuck on a shot and you have to go back to your fundamentals, start animating a ball to get the action right, and then you put your character in there and try and like match the ball's animation just because you know how the fundamentals of a moving ball. So you never learn animation. It's a skill you're constantly just improving and getting better at. So uh, I'm by no means like the most amazing animator, and I know I won't be, and I won't ever know animation. I'll just constantly improve every year. What I do know is I probably know more than someone who's a student and who has less experience than me, but I will never know more than someone who has more experience than me. And it's always always at a certain level. You can help the people underneath you, and you might know a thing or two that the people above you won't know, but you know you're always at a level, and you increase and someone else takes your place and increases with you. So uh learning animation is hard. I'd say for sure,
Yeah,
but
and
it is
to
doable.
make
Yeah.
things a little bit more complicated than just a simple, gradual spectrum of quality, you could introduce some other factors, like, for example, more stylized animation and realistic animation. Like there
For
are
sure. Yeah. There's no
genres.
like exactly. It's you can't really answer that question, I think, because like you said, yeah, there's different styles of animation. There's different types of animation. Uh, there isn't just um, I know Excel really well, or like Google Sheets really well, and you could learn Google Sheets. You could learn everything. I'm sure there's a lot, but you could learn everything there is about Google Sheets, and that's it. But the skill cap for an artist is always growing. So same with animation. You can know the software that you're animating in, but the skill to animate, training your eye to catch movements and create nice silhouettes and nice appealing poses, you could always get better at that. Nice framing. There's all these things that play into animation. That's not just movement either. So yeah, you could definitely be like improving at like different branches at the same time, and that becomes your that circle becomes your animation skill.
So if it is hard, as you said, maybe you do have some secret hack or trick to learn animation really quickly, or is there no shortcut and you just have to go through the long and painful way?
Unfortunately, there is no shortcut. If someone tells you there is a shortcut, they're lying, because there's no way to just learn how to be a good animator in like a short period of time. Because like I said, you could learn all the tools in a program. So for example, we're teaching Blender, and so if you learn all the animation tools in Blender, yes, you're gonna have an easier time when animating. But if you haven't trained your eye over the years and animated or have too much animation experience, even though you know the tool, you're still not going to produce anything that's appealing in any way. You might think it's good, but like someone who knows what they're doing looks at it and it's like, I don't know about that. Like this and this is wrong. The knees are popping. There isn't a proper curve here, and the timing is off. The spacing is off, and like you would have no idea because you just know the program. So you just have to what programs and schools can do is that they can give you a base and they can give you the fundamentals. And once you know about the base, once you know about the fundamentals, then you can start adding on top of those each individual one.
So what
So
would you?
that second part's up to you, right?
Yeah, and generally, probably if it's like a long and painful way, there might be like the more painful and less painful way. So I would want to ask
Yes.
you, what would
Sure.
you
Yeah.
say? What would you say is the number one, like most crucial skill that you have to master to become a good animator?
That's a hard question. So the first answer that came to my head was I thought when you said there's a long and crucial way of learning something, and there's a slightly less crucial way of learning something. And I think I have the answer for that. The answer to that would be the long and extremely cruciating way of learning is learning by yourself and not having any direction. Because when you're learning by yourself, when you get stuck, you get stuck. When you're learning by yourself, there may be questions that you have that you can't have answered, or there may be questions that you don't even know you should be asking that are causing you problems. You just don't know those questions exist. So I think the least cruciating way of learning is to have some sort of support system. Uh, it could either be a community, it could be a professor, it could be uh, other students or other people that have been and have done what you're doing right now. But without that and without lessons and a direction, it's going to be very hard to learn a skill, especially an artistic skill. So I think that would be the least cruciating way of learning.
Mm-hmm. So would you think maybe a university, like a structured education, would be a good way to go? Or
Yeah, so there is, there's this pros and cons to both institutional schools and online schools. So I think for fostering a community, and institutional schools are a lot better at that, especially if it's in person. If it's during COVID times and you can't even go to the school, then there's no point. Just go to an online school. But if you, for example, for me in Sheridan, one of the reasons I worked so hard on my film and to get better was because I would look around and all the other students were there at 12 a.m. All these other students were there at like 2 a.m. still working, and that kind of motivated me to continue working. That made me, I would think to myself, I'm not going to be the first one to leave here. Like I need to prove myself. Um, so institutional schools give you that, but they also waste your time a lot if you already know what you want to do, as we talked about earlier. So there's pros and cons, I'd say for sure.
okay, so there's also a lot of free learning content on YouTube and other places nowadays, at least. Maybe some years ago it wasn't that many, but right now it's
Yeah,
quite plenty of, like, including your channel and the likes of it. And what is the advantage of a paid structured course like toanimate?
sure.
And
Yeah,
like, why is it worth the money investment?
yeah. So like you said, a few years ago, there was very little animation content and just information about the industry online. It always seemed like this magical thing. You meet an animator, you're like, oh my God, like I wonder what his life is like. Now I lived the life and I'm like, oh, maybe maybe I shouldn't have asked that. No. But it was very mysterious back then. There wasn't enough information online, which was one of the reasons I actually made my YouTube channel, was because I wanted to kind of demystify the whole uh, industry for people that were interested, because I generally didn't know who to ask or who to talk to. Um, and I found it very hard to find like get anyone's attention to ask them some questions. Um, so that's the kind of why I decided to start like giving out content on YouTube, and just I try to keep a schedule where I'm uploading every week. It becomes a little hard with just being an animator full time, just because when you work in the industry, there's ups, there's downs, there's a lot of there's a lot of overtime. Sometimes months at a time. So it's hard to keep a consistent schedule when you're working as an animator. Now, to answer your question of the difference between free and paid content, both are good, and both have their advantages and disadvantages. Again, advantage of free content is that it's free, and if you have to drive, you can go and consume it and learn things. You could learn a bit here, you could learn a bit there, you could learn some of this. the advantage of a paid education is that you're putting trust in the person that created that content. You're trusting them to create a coherent and step-by-step guide for you that all connects, uh, and not just random tutorials where you learn this, you learn that. You expect them, and you expect the course that you paid for to have uh, help you understand, help you answer the questions you didn't know you had to ask. And so I think that, and on top of that, in terms of toanimate, for example, just to show ourselves a little bit, we're trying to foster a community as well. So we know the biggest aspects of animation is that, like, it needs to be coherent, and it needs to be a progressive sort of line where you add on top of the previous lesson, and you just keep getting more and more advanced. That's probably the easiest way to learn and for people to comprehend your lessons. But we also know that community is very, very important. And so we've just actually created a forum slash, it's, okay, so how can I explain this? It's like Discord, but better and more professional. And it's a space, we're creating a space where students can share job information, animation news. They can post their progress, and other students can comment and guide them. And there's a lot of other stuff. I don't want to give it away too much, but we'll be hosting contests, and we're kind of like fostering a community of artists and animators. And we just had our Kickstarter, and luckily it was very successful. And so we have over 400 students now already pre-signed up. So the course is still in the making. So these students have kind of put their trust in us to and given us their money to join toanimate at a very, very early stage and help us build it. So we're also taking suggestions from them on what they think would help them learn. And so they're helping us build this course and this community from ground up. And we're hoping to have a full release, most likely around August of this year of 2022. So that's our aim. But until then, we're just gonna we're going to see what happens with this community and with this course and with these students. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, so I guess
very long.
That structure part and the community thing is like pretty interesting. I find a little bit of similarity to what the Blender Studio does, for example, with the whole open movie projects and letting people like sneak peek into the work of the studio and kind of learn by watching other people work. But what you said about community and the possible feedback that you get as a teacher and then the student can get for their work as well, I think that's also very valuable. I think that's the thing that you can't get from a free YouTube video unless it has a community around it or some other.
Which is very hard to create. I've been making videos on YouTube for free for 3 years, and I'm sure I've helped people, but it's definitely different. It's definitely different putting up a public video with anyone can just come and click and go, versus a tight paid community that's like everybody knows why everybody else is in there. It's not just random people coming in and going. So like that people in there are dedicated and they're there for a reason, for the same reasons you're in there. So I think it definitely makes a big difference for sure.
Okay, so how old is too late to start learning animation? Like, let's say I'm in my 40s now, just began, and let's say I would like to start animating. So do you think it's ever too late or not?
I don't think so. I don't think it's ever too late if it's something you're very, very passionate about. But I think if you are going to start it late in life, you should know that it is 9 out of 10 times, it is not going to be an easy career. And unless you are very passionate about animation and you're passionate about working on, big projects with lots of different artists and extremely talented people, unless you're passionate about that, you're likely going to burn out very quickly because, 9 out of 10 productions are very hard, and they scale, and you have to put in a lot of overtime. sometimes months at a time. So if you have a family and other commitments outside of work, it will be harder for you. That being said, again, I know people who are very late um, in their life, and they're doing just fine as animators or lead supervisors, directors. They're still in the industry at a very old age. When I started in the industry, now this may not be that old, but when I started, I was around 22, I think 20, yeah, around 22, and the animator that was sitting beside me, he was in his early 30s. He was around 32, I believe, and he had just started where he had like a year of experience, 2 years of experience. And so I think he started learning animation in his 30s. So he's a lead now, and he's going back and forth between Sony and this other studio, and he's an extremely talented animator, and he started animating in his 30s. He started learning about it, being even interested about it in his 30s. So I don't think it's ever too late. I think if you're passionate about it and you have the drive, you could start learning animation at any age.
Okay, so that's for all your dinos out there that are lurking maybe in other niches of the CGI industry. That's some ray of hope. Anyway, let's skip to another question, and I wanted to ask you about rigging, like, because as an animator, you often, like probably most of the time, you use other people's rigs. Do you have to learn rigging to be an animator, or is it not? Is it useful or completely unnecessary?
I think so. I should start this by saying I despise rigging with a passion. But that being said, I thank Sheridan for kind of like forcing me to learn it and like learn about all the other aspects of the industry. Because when you're working in the industry, when you're working on a large project, you have people from all these different, like, yes, they're in different departments, but you're all working together. So one department, you could be waiting for one department to finish their work so you can start your work, and then the next department's waiting for you to finish your work so they can start doing their part of the job. So, and especially for rigging and animation, they kind of go hand in hand. A lot of times we're waiting for rigs, and once we get rigs, things aren't working right. Excuse me. And if you know what is not working right, if you know the basics of rigging, then you can kind of pinpoint what the problem is. You could be like, oh, like the shoulder here, the weight paint isn't properly painted on. You should probably get these vertices that you missed. Here are the vertices you missed. Or you could direct the rigger and better explain what the issue is. Now, you won't have to fix it, but at least you can have an easier time communicating with that rigger how they could solve your problem. So I think in that sense, it definitely is useful to know the basics of rigging and how it works. You don't have to know how to rig a character from scratch, but just know the basics. I think that's probably the most beneficial thing.
Okay,
that was a good question.
So talking about different tools and different like pipeline intricacies of animation, I wanted to ask about the future that's kind of maybe coming or not. I wanted to ask about the AI tools for animation that are kind of emerging recent years, like for example the mocap things like Deepmotion or Plask recently or something like that popped out. I'm asking this also because I was guilty of making a YouTube video about Deepmotion, and
Deepmotion,
kind of went viral. Like me without a proper animator experience, being able to turn my kind of video reference into something that maybe resembles an animation and maybe it is possible to be cleaned up afterwards, like a mocap data.
Yeah.
And possibly like this is the beginning of something that's going to evolve into AI doing some parts of the handwork in animation. So do you think it will be just a tool in the pipeline or something that will kind of replace manual work of animators? in the future.
I think you nailed it on the head with what you said earlier, where it I think, obviously I don't have a crystal ball to tell you what's going to happen in the future, but from my understanding of these tools and, just how humans kind of make tools and for what reasons, I think where this would go, and the limitations of AI right now, and from what I've seen, I think these tools will be that tools. I think they will make kind of work that is redundant, work that is hard to do, and I can't find the right word for it, but work that no one wants to do. I believe these will help with that, but there will be an artist behind it directing the work that this AI is doing. Like you said, there's a lot of AI coming up, especially for art. There's one where you tell it, "Hey, show me a dog with purple hat and like a red bow tie," and it'll it'll make that for you. But someone has to be going and typing that and adjusting it. And yes, you can have mocap animation. You can animate everything in mocap if you'd like, but that's not that's one style. It's like we talked about earlier. There's realistic, then there is stylistic, and so I can't see how a program or a mocap animation could be a stylistic animation with. And if you're going to start adjusting it and changing the timing and changing the poses, you might as well just animate it yourself at that point. But maybe there's an AI that'll help you with the in between poses. Maybe an animator can come in and put in the key poses and give it a range, be like, "Hey, medium speed, fast, and like slow in between these keys," and like the AI will go and apply physics to it and give you something that you can adjust. So I think in terms of the future, the AI is there to be a tool for the animator or for the artist to use. I don't think it's there to take the job away from them.
Yeah, I think it's like the nature of the whole AI, like machine learning algorithms and stuff. They are quite dependent on what you feed them. So it's like these are tools that are very good at replicating what has been done, or maybe mixing up things that already have been done. But if you want to go really creative, it's not what it can do right now, at least.
Yeah.
And I think like recently I saw the 2-minute papers about the new AI thing that's creating images from your writing, and it kind of had problems exactly with these strange input data. Like if someone wanted something that is not really usual, that is kind of like weird, it was having a hard time with it because it wasn't really something that you could like easily grab from numerous other images.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll be still as artists we'll have something to do, and maybe just differently than we are used to right now. Probably what we are doing right now would seem like black magic to people from the 19th century.
Yeah, that's true. And who knows, maybe we'll look back and be like, "Oh my God, these guys did all this stuff by hand." Like how we look back and, Disney animators drawing frame by frame on paper and, using painting cells to paint on top.
Or like right now, people doing the photogrammetry all around, with their cell phones, and just everyone can scan themselves. And if you take a look at the history of CGI and the first experiments, with putting 3D objects into a computer, which was like big as a whole room, and people were kind of measuring stuff with rulers.
Now you just have your phone and you just go, there we go, 360 degrees, got a 3D scan. Yeah. Exactly. You never know where technology is going to go in 10 years.